If you haven't listened to Professor Michael Sugrew's presentation of Robinson Crusoe, then I highly suggest you listen to it. Robinson Crusoe is a perfect example of an enlightenment man. He is rational, that moves through the ladders of society with each technological advancement, until he takes his place as the natural ruler of this lonely island. His emotional responses are gold, and he moves forward like a logical machine as a colonial overlord. In similar vein, I could describe Gulliver Lemur as a perfect model for a romantic hero, or anti-enlightenment figure. He is more humane and a man with emotional life that is very powerful. When Robinson Crusoe's guiding principles are the laws of the marketplace, Gulliver Lemur follows his soul and his morals. He does not become all-powerful and lawful European ruler to the natural world during his travels, but a deeply troubled idealist that isolates himself from the crass humanity. The author, Jonathan Swift, was himself a critic of his times, an Anglican clergyman who didn't put his faith on pure rationality, but he couldn't be called a conservative man of his time either. In many ways, he was skeptical towards everything in human society and condemned religious zealot behavior and despotic kings, just as he condemned the liberal educated philosophers who saw the way out of human sins through science. Gulliver Travels was published few years after Robinson Crusoe, and it consists 4 different journeys of Gulliver that lead him to be a misanthrope, a man who despises humanity despite being well-off family man. It is quite anti-colonial and anti-establishment, so it feels really out of place for a novel that was published in 1725. Although a lot of references to the party politics and royal houses are lost to the modern reader, I think the human traits portrayed in the novel are timeless, and that just shows how good observer of human nature Mr. Swift was. There is a theory that he also criticizes his own isolation from his time and his general growing alienation for humanity with his alter ego Gulliver, who becomes quite desperate person in the end. And I do think there's a point to this theory, because there are a lot of beautiful lines he writes about childish innocence and good deeds of humans that makes me believe that he was also a critic of himself and his sad state of his life when this novel was finished. Let's take a look into Gulliver's Travels and see what we can tell from this journey. The first part of Gulliver's Travel is the most famous one that we all probably know from our childhood. It depicts the island of Lilliput, small humans that are around 15 centimeters tall. Gulliver is an educated man from quite humble beginnings. He works as a doctor for ships to provide his family. He is shipwrecked and wakes up being tied to the ground by these Lilliputs. To summarize this chapter quickly, he starts out as a prisoner who becomes a member of the Lilliput king's court thanks to his good manners, and he ends a civil war that is raging between them, and eventually has to escape from a secret plot that is aimed to assassinate him. This chapter is full of references to the early 18th century England's political situation that are lost to us, but the themes are very familiar to modern day. As a giant in this strange land, Gulliver is a weapon of mass destruction, huge advantage to the nation, but at the same time cause of suspicion for the scheming politicians. He is like an idea, force majeure, that needs to be used and discarded when it proves no more utility to the little man, who need to control everything. Quite funny, isn't it? Look at the political state of the modern England that is throwing away free speech and open society, since it proves no more utility for the ruling class. Thank God Mr. Swift is in heaven. Even though Gulliver is this major figure to the nation, he is also a prisoner of the state that eventually wants to destroy him because he has showed some moral conviction that clashes with the interest of the state. There is a great divide among Lilliputs that put them into 2 factions. There are ones who believe eggs should be cracked open from the top, while others believe it should be cracked open from the bottom. This allegory is very easy to understand if you know that Europe has come out of hundreds of years of brutal religious wars between Protestants and Catholics, that egg is the message of Jesus Christ, and killing a fellow man because of dogmatic differences is ridiculous. Gulliver takes a risk to his own health and decides to end the war by dismantling the navy of the invading party without taking any unnecessary lives, and refuses to make the kingdom that discovered him as the last society standing. This is very interesting from Gulliver's part. When he is first captured, he notices that he could break free and destroy everyone at sight. He even tells about these feelings of anger and aggression that he feels first time he is captured, but he wants to respect the natives and learn their language and manners. He is definitely not a conquistador. Do you think Robinson Crusoe would showcase emotions in this situation, or showcase humanity to the opposing faction in the war? Gulliver is being a good Christian, even though he had the power to destroy everyone in this kingdom. The first part of the book is written very nicely, and is full of details how this perspective of senses in miniature world gives new perspective on life in general. I think the most notable is how he openly even mentions the problem of defecating as a giant. It really gives a lot of realism of human needs and emotion that we all would have in this bizarre situation. I think one of the greatest examples of human pettiness is showcased when Gulliver saves the king's castle that is burning by urinating on it. He saves the castle, but gets into trouble with the queen that thinks this act is unredeemable. It is a very smart and funny metaphor of elitism and free speech, and makes me wonder how this book got past the censors during its time. Jonathan Swift was a very provocative critic of his nation. During the Irish famine, Swift wrote the line that orphans of Ireland could be sent to English aristocrats to be eaten as a dinner. He obviously didn't mean that. This is how he criticized the ruling class that was very passive to different societal problems. I guess in the modern times, this sense of irony would be totally lost, and we would get headlines and social media posts that would paint him as a cannibal. It is notable that once Gulliver returns to England from Lilliput Island, he is a wealthy man that could support his growing family, but after receiving a steady income from his family, he yearns for more adventures like foolish Crusoe and takes off to the sea again. During the second expedition on a strange island, he is separated from his party that is chased down by a giant. As you can guess, the second part of the book changes the scenario backwards. In this island called Brobdingnag, Gulliver is a tiny creature. What role does he play in this strange land this time? Well, he is now an attraction, sight to be seen, a joke. There's a wonderful line how the most educated scholars of the kingdom examine Gulliver and decide to label him as a freak of nature, because he does not fit into their theories of the world. At first, it is a peasant family that discovers Gulliver, makes him a traveling show that is exploited for money until being sold to the king's court. So once again, he is a property of the ruling class, but it is more obvious and honest this time. He is not a powerful concept in the court, but a mere entertainer. Being a source of amusement to the elite obviously troubles his pride. So Gulliver tries to paint England to them as an advanced, great civilized nation, but the king of this court pokes holes to this propaganda during their dialogue. This part feels a little bit tedious, and it is obvious that the author is portraying his own critiques towards society through their king. Brobdingnag is a very utopian society, unlike the imperfect Lilliput kingdom. The kingdom is united, and the laws are short and to the point. When Gulliver tries to give secrets of gunpowder and modern warfare to the king, he is turned down and told never to spread such evil concepts. The king is not just a giant in physical size, but also by his moral standing. I personally think that this part of the book makes me think that Swift was actually critical towards Gulliver's eventual misanthropy. Swift never married and lived with a chronic illness during his lifetime, but I can't help to think how beautifully he depicts the peasant girl that becomes Gulliver's caregiver. The girl is innocent, loving, and loyal to Gulliver, and when departing this island, Gulliver feels troubled that this disappearance might cause problems to her. There is this nice line how the girl picks a small piece of statue and keeps it as a prized treasure, like most of her peers do with trinkets. That makes me think that Swift really appreciated the innocence of the children. I also think the conflict with the court midget is very nicely told. The rivalry with Gulliver and court midget is fierce, but Gulliver shows understanding to the midget's jealousy towards him. He has taken his place. There's quite a lot of body horror in Gulliver's travels that express his hidden distaste for humanity. There's quite a lengthy paragraph in The Land of Giants how the perspective makes humans more uglier, when you can see all the small details in their skins, all the little imperfections. Seeing a giant female nipple with its small details makes Gulliver ill, although this nipple is being used to breastfeed a child. Totally normal and innocent act. But I think the author is trying to say that the knowledge is destroying humans' perspective on each other. Gulliver's time in the land ends by chance, when his cage is caught by an eagle that drops him back to the ocean and he finds his way back to England. For his third voyage, he is lured away from his family with the title of captain. Once again, we get very brief encounter with pirates, and now Gulliver is again left to a mysterious island that turns out to be an archipelago, and it is ruled by a flying island called Laputa. Spanish speakers probably get that reference. The third part of the voyage is most humorous part of the book, and is very critical towards the cult of science, and that feels very relevant to this day. People today are very preoccupied to hype startup companies and believe that theories of physics can fill their empty holes in their psyche. Island of Laputa works on magnets that are made possible by the area's abnormal geology. Only the ruling court lives on this island with its servants. The elite is preoccupied by mathematics and music. They spend their days calculating when the sun will die, and other astronomical phenomena that they can't get out of their mind. They need servants to slap them with sticks so they can concentrate on matters in hand, like eating, talking to each other, and other daily activities. Gulliver, although civilized and educated man full of knowledge about new lands, does not interest them. Only mathematics and music are worthy knowledge for them, so he ends up being quite neutral tourist for this land that does not get involved into matters that much. Gulliver focuses on making observations from this science-based world that is not concentrating on natural reason. Everything worth value is on the lands beneath Laputa. When rebellions rise once a while, the island is simply used to block the sun or used as a threat to cross the city beneath it. Islands under its rule are being turned into failed science experiments through the Great Academy. Early on we get a hint that the science that the court worships is not that accurate. When Taylor takes one measurement from Gulliver's body and uses mathematical formula to calculate the rest of his measurements, the end result is an ill-fitting attire. There's a lot of theories produced in the Great Academy that are implemented with poor results all over the society. But nobody dares to oppose this loss of common sense because they fall out of favor of the court. The great scholars of Great Academy would label them as close-minded pea-brains. Gulliver's visit to the Great Academy is very funny, and I can't believe that Anglican clergyman can be so poignant with his humor. For example, there's a professor who has been working for years to transfer human feces back to their original state as food items. I'm not going to go through all of these examples, but the gist of the thing is that these highly respected title holders are working on pointless theories on state money, and it is custom for visitors to give them coins while they explain their loony ideas. There's also islands on this realm that possess real metaphysical abilities. One island has immortals living among them. Few of them are born randomly each year. Gulliver, of course, has real Faustian idea of immortality that is found to be funny on the island, because the immortals are the most unhappy people on Earth. It is a curse to be immortal. They never die, but they never stop aging either, meaning that they lose their mind with dementia and turn into isolated subjects without any use to anyone with the passing of the time. Gulliver makes a note how this immortal man should be spread all over the world, so everyone could be grateful for the eternal peace that is awaiting them. There is also an island where the dead can be summoned back on Earth as ghosts. Here the author Swift gets to make a point of historical figures who he disdains and who he appreciates. As you can guess, Socrates, the eternal truth seeker, makes an appearance as one of his heroes, and there is very Thomas Aquinian type of idea thrown out that these men of great nature socialize with each other in heaven. This is obviously what sick Jonathan Swift is dreaming of at this time, getting to spend eternity with other honest souls from all walks of life. And I think here we get the real taste of Gulliver's looming fate, when he summons common English peasants that have not been corrupted by venereal diseases, like the modern English peasants. Once again, this is body horror used to showcase moral corruption. Once Gulliver returns to England again and embarks on his final journey, we start to feel the strain here. And this time he is betrayed by his own crew on the voyage and left alone to an unknown island. This island is the lands of Houyhnhnms, and they have the most perfect utopian society because the Houyhnhnms are not humans but horses. There are some humans in this island called Yahoos that are completely mindless savage creatures that hate each other and spend their time digging fool's gold and stockpiling it. Of course, these Yahoos are very ugly creatures. It is a Planet of the Apes scenario, basically. Houyhnhnms don't have a word for a lie and generally don't spend time talking nonsense, although they practice poetry. They face death stoically, they don't practice warfare, they have a council that can only give advices, because no one can really rule over each other. But since they know by nature their places, they always heed to these advices of the council. It is a meritocracy by nature. You are born into status that belongs to you. It is a meritocracy by nature. If you are not born with intelligence, then you are not the top of the society. There's actually a very interesting conversation how the horses can't understand why would a rational man cover his body with clothes unless he feels shame what the nature has given to him. Once again, I wouldn't think a man of God could write something radical like this in the early 18th century. Yahoos are basically a pest that is put to use for pulling carriages. They are depicted in a very vile manner, and Gulliver feels ashamed of being one of them. He is a great curiosity as a Yahoo that has a little bit of reason, and is treated as a guest with great generosity. Gulliver loves to live with Houyhnhnms, since they are the most perfect creatures on earth, and fuels anger towards himself as part of the Yahoo tribe. Here we get a feeling that all that has been bothering Jonathan Swift in this world is being written down. In the conversation with his host, Gulliver does not try to portray England as the finest country on earth, like he did for the Giant King, but instead laments about lawyers and courts destroying the concept of justice, doctors predicting death to everyone and being boastful when everyone dies like they predicted, while making money, politicians acquiring their positions without merit and using it to increase their personal wealth. If a son of an aristocrat is something else than a withered, passive and pale, his mother probably cheated him with a servant. This goes on quite a long time, and I can't say that Gulliver is wrong here, but I can't call all the human world evil and wicked, and neither can the reader. All of that ranting in the 4th chapter is quite tiresome to some point, but I think Mr. Swift has noticed it. When Gulliver is made to leave the land because he is a Yahoo that is being eradicated as a pest from the island, he goes back to humans and his home, and he is not depicted in any good way in my opinion. The Portuguese captain, that is very kind and likable and civilized person, is a still stinking Yahoo to Gulliver, although he tries to appreciate him. Gulliver returns to his home and remains as a distant person to his family. I think the reader feels really frustrated to this chronically depressed man that is living in his dreams. I think Swift understood at this point that he was going to die alone, but nobody should feel pity for him, because we certainly don't feel pity for Gulliver. His voyages are concluded, and he remarks how England should not colonize any of these lands, since they do not possess any real resources that have value. It is very interesting how he uses his persuasive gift of gap to rationalize the lack of value to a greedy empire. He does not believe men should engage in warfare because it is morally wrong, but he understands that he must reason with their greed instead of telling the truth, because the truth has no real value in the world of Yahoos.